Council Bluffs Area Chamber of Commerce members. This is Drew Camp, President and CEO of the Council Bluffs Chamber, here for one of our candidate interviews for one of our state legislative candidates appearing on the November 3rd ballot. We're joined here by Brent Siegrist. Brent, thank you very much for being here with us today.
Happy to be here, and I want to congratulate you. I think this is a great idea for your members.
Well, thank you. This is one of those things that advocacy is really a pillar of any chamber, and it's one of the things we really want to make sure we're providing that information to people prior to the election in a safe manner. You know, obviously all things considered with the pandemic. So thanks again for being flexible as well and doing this via Zoom with us.
You bet.
Kind of jumping right into the questions. The first one we want to talk about is just what is the top issue that you see Council Bluffs and Southwest Iowa facing, and how would you address it if elected to the legislature?
Well, unfortunately, it's probably the pandemic right now. I don't think that would be true other years, but pandemic relief. So in terms of the legislature, making sure that funds, be it the federal CARES funds or some state funds, would be available to help with businesses to recover from the pandemic. The other issue I think that faces the Council Bluffs is, through no fault of anybody, we have a bit of an inferiority complex, I think, and we need to raise our visibility and respect in Des Moines at the state capitol, which is pretty good, but I think it could certainly be better. And after that, it's just some of the economic development programs to try to help move our city ahead. And lastly, it's not as important now. It still is important, but flood relief and making sure that we're taking care of the flood situation.
And those are all certainly timely subjects, that's for sure right now. And those are also subjects that the Council Bluffs Chamber of Commerce, will be advocating on as part of our advocacy efforts. So thank you. When you look at kind of the statewide issues, what do you think needs to be addressed statewide, and how will you work to resolve them if reelected to the state legislature?
Well, there we have numerous issues, and again, the pandemic is going to be one of them to keep the state moving forward. Again, with my previous service in the legislature, I'm pretty attuned to how to get things done. The budget's going to be the biggest issue, as it is in any year. Frankly, Iowa's as good a shape as anybody in the nation moving into this next legislative session. So we should be thankful for that. We haven't seen any deep cuts, nor do I think we will have to. So the budget is, as always, right there. Healthcare access is important. You see it at the federal level. Healthcare in Iowa and the affordability of it is very important, as well as one of the biggest issues is accessibility to mental health care. All my work with education over the last 30 years, one of probably the biggest issue for schools is the mental health of students and so on. So that's going to be a big issue too. Infrastructure is important with the gas tax. I don't know, 7-8 years ago, we've maintained that fairly well, but infrastructure is already important, very important. Rural broadband. And the expansion of rural broadband is extremely important if we're going to have economic viability in our smaller towns. We're lucky, obviously, in Council Bluffs with Google that we have pretty good connectivity, but rural broadband is going to be important. And then lastly, as always, is taxes. The tax structure, how we use the tax structure and how we can modify the tax structure to help us compete as a border city. Sometimes you get into the fact that Des Moines and Cedar Rapids legislators don't have the same idea about what tax structure should look like because they're not competing with a major metropolitan area across the river. So the tax structure is important. If I could, very, very quickly here, though, I would add that for me, and when I was majority leader before, we cut income taxes 10% across the board. So I like to cut taxes, but at the same time, you have to focus on your priorities. So before you go about cutting taxes quite a bit, you need to make sure you're funding properly your education, your prison system, or your priorities.
And as we look at, what the Council Bluffs Chamber and our Chamber Alliance, we're part of the Iowa Chamber Alliance, which is the 18 largest chambers in the state, which represent tens of thousands of members and have a very loud voice for business. Those are some of our big issues. Obviously, we're always looking at infrastructure. Broadband's an issue we've talked a lot about over the past few years, as well as the tax structure. We're always looking at that as well to make sure we're competitive, especially now that I'm here in Council Bluffs. It's especially apparent, as you mentioned, because, we compete directly with the large metropolitan area just across the river.
Yes.
And when you look at opportunities for the state of Iowa, what do you see as the biggest opportunity for the state going forward?
Well, you focus on your strengths, and obviously, despite what you hear, our education system is still strong in Iowa, although it has had some less than adequate funding the last couple of years, but it's still a good education system, which is a big draw. We look at our community college system and the workforce development that we have there with the programs that we're using to help small businesses expand and grow. And with those types of issues, you want to continue to grow those things. So the opportunity we have is that we have got a good quality of life in Iowa. We have a pretty stable government. We have a good education system. I do want to take and put more emphasis on our quality of life issues, our parks and recs and our trails, because I think as we try to overcome the workforce shortage, which we do have in Iowa. I've talked to various people around the state, and they'll tell you that they own businesses and they can't get the employees that they need. We need to make the state as attractive as possible. So I think we've got a good baseline. Again, with education, with quality of life, we have a pretty good park system, workforce development using the community colleges. I think we need to focus on those and continue to grow from those. And if we include in that trying to work further on housing, particularly not necessarily low-income housing, affordable housing, and with our mental health and affordable health care, I think Iowa becomes a much more attractive place to come in and grow and expand. So those would be the strengths that I would like to be building on. So.
Perfect. And along those lines, how do you see yourself working with the chamber and the business community to accomplish those ends?
Well, I think probably the same way that I have done it before, and that's simply being responsive and available. I think it's extremely important to be around town. I've obviously been in Council Bluffs literally my whole life, and so I do think I understand the community. As you probably know, and your members know, the last 2 years, I've been an advocate for Council Bluffs, Potawatomi County, the school district, the college, and the chamber in Des Moines. So I've got those relationships right now. There's no need to develop them. They're already there. And on the flip side of that, I've got the relationships with all of our legislators, because number one, I know most of them from my previous service and being in touch since then. And number two, I know that we've been able to be successful in moving some of those issues forward. So I would do more of the same, I guess, which is being available and being responsive when people have concerns or they want to talk about something. You make sure you're available to them, get to understand the issue, and then go back to Des Moines and start to work on it. And given my previous service, obviously, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, I go in with instant credibility, I guess, because I absolutely know how to do this, and I've proven that before. So my work with the chamber and businesses would be the same as always. Work hard with them and try to get their views expressed and their concerns addressed.
As we look at some of the top policy issues, we've discussed a few of those just a little bit ago, but for the chamber, a lot of the times they center on income tax reform, economic development assistance mechanisms, with the tax credits with the Iowa Economic Development Authority, as well as tax increment financing on the local level, as well as placemaking initiatives. Those are your quality of life that help attract a workforce and keep people in your community. How will you work to address these issues, for example, and partner with the big business community once again in doing so?
Well, first off, when you talk about the big business communities across the state, they already know who I am, so I can be effective right away. Again, you don't spend, I hate to talk like this because it sounds like you're bragging, but you don't spend 10 years as the leader of the House, 7 years as majority leader, and 3 years as speaker without having dealt with those people. And so I think I've already built that trust up. But be it tax reform, which we've discussed a little bit, something, for example, like the targeted jobs tax credit, which really benefits Sioux City and Council Bluffs, which we got extended last year. I was working with that with the chamber and the city for another 3 years, I believe. We need to focus in on those things that specifically help us be able to grow our community. So those initiatives are things that I've already worked on. I will say very quickly that I am proposing and Restore the Outdoors 2.0. In my previous stint in the legislature, we put $3 million a year for 4 years into our park system, which then was to use to get rid of our deferred maintenance. I'm thrilled that the DNR is focusing on Lake Manawan. I think that's great, but we need to do that across the state. And so I'll be proposing Restore the Outdoors 2.0, which will say, let's take $3 million a year of the gaming revenue, which is not out of the general budget, and take that 12 million over 4 years and put it into our deferred maintenance at our parks. So those types of issues are very important, but it's all about building partnerships and building consensus. And one quick one also that I know is an issue in Council Bluffs is I want to work on the land banks concept, which I think is important for Council Bluffs. And Senator Dawson's been working on that, but I can help him out with that.
Well, that's great. We really appreciate you touching on some of those subjects. And also, you focused on some of the outdoors and the Parks and Rec and the DNR, the Department of Natural Resource pieces. Obviously, those are things that are especially popular right now during the pandemic. People are going out and using those resources. So so it's exciting to hear proposals in which those would be strengthened. What unique skill sets would you say you would bring to the position? I think you've touched on some of them, but I just wanted to ask again, what unique skill sets do you bring to the position?
Well, again, I sound braggy, but I'm a proven leader. You don't get to be the leader of the House for 10 years without having the skills you need to build consensus and to get things done. And I could go through a litany of things that I accomplished, I think, when I was there with the help of everybody in the House. But that's not why I'm running. I'm running to do things for the future. But I think that's the unique skill. Day one, I'm effective. When I make my committee requests, if I'm elected, I'm pretty much assured that I'm going to get what I request because I'm the former speaker, and that carries a certain cachet with it. So I just think that I've proven that I can work both sides of the aisle. If you do talk to Democrats, I think they'll say relatively nice things about me. When I left the legislature, Tom Vilsack was one of my 3 references. Even though the governor and I fought a lot, we had mutual respect. So I think the skills I bring are communication skills and a proven ability to get things done and being available back in the community. And it's a community that I understand because I've been here for forever.
And the final question I have for you is, why should voters cast their ballot for you on November 3rd?
Well, similar to just what I said. Number one, the issues that I am talking about is to continue to fund our education system and improve that funding. Look at our workforce shortage, which is really what will hold Council Bluffs and the state of Iowa back. I served on the Future Ready Iowa Task Force that is really moving ahead with getting our workforce better trained and into the future. So those 2 issues and then the quality of life issues are very, very important to me. So I've proven before that I can get those things done. And so if I'm fortunate enough to win a person's vote, what they get is somebody that can work with both sides of the aisle, that has a proven track record, but also has a vision for the future, and that will work with both sides to get things done, and I think be a pretty effective representative for Council Bluffs, and bring, again, some visibility and respect. That sounds like we don't have that now, we do, but bring more visibility to Council Bluffs because the former speaker just carries that type of attention with him, and I intend to use that to my fullest extent to benefit the people of Council Bluffs.
Well, Brent, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us today. We really appreciate you answering our questions and giving our members this unique insight into kind of your campaign and why you think you'd be the best person to serve us in the legislature.
I greatly appreciate the opportunity. Again, I think it's great for your members. So congrats for getting all the candidates together and doing it. It's wonderful.
Well, thanks again, Brent. You take care of yourself and best wishes going forward.
Thank you very much. And vote.